The Uyghurs are a vibrant cultural group primarily residing in Xinjiang, a region in northwest China. Their heritage is a rich tapestry of language, tradition, and faith. For centuries they have called this land home, their lives interwoven with its ancient Silk Road history. But today the Uyghurs face an existential threat, their very identity under assault by the Chinese government. Xinjiang has transformed into a region of intense surveillance, a place where fear casts a long shadow. The Uyghurs are caught in the grip of a systematic campaign of oppression, their voices silenced, their freedoms stripped away. The Chinese government justifies its actions in the name of security. They claim to be combating extremism and separatism. However, evidence reveals a far more sinister agenda. Human rights organizations, along with governments across the globe, are sounding the alarm. They are calling out the Chinese government for what is happening in Xinjiang, a systematic persecution of the Uyghur people. The accusations against the Chinese government are grave, crimes against humanity, and even genocide. These charges stem from a litany of documented abuses. Uyghurs are being detained en masse, ripped from their families and communities without cause. Reports of torture within the detention centers are horrifyingly consistent. Enforced disappearances have become commonplace, leaving families in a state of agonizing uncertainty. The Chinese government's actions extend beyond physical abuse. Uyghurs are subjected to a relentless campaign of cultural and religious persecution. Their mosques are destroyed, their traditions suppressed, their language marginalized. Children are separated from their parents, forced to abandon their heritage and embrace a Han Chinese identity. This systematic erasure of Uyghur culture is deeply alarming, raising concerns about the very survival of this ancient people. Central to the Chinese government's campaign of repression are the so-called re-education camps. These facilities have sprung up across Xinjiang, swallowing up an estimated 1 million Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims. Despite the innocuous name, the reality inside these camps is grim. Detainees are subjected to forced labor, political indoctrination, and inhumane living conditions. Reports of torture, sexual abuse, and even death are chillingly common. The Chinese government insists that these camps are vocational training centers designed to combat extremism. However, the evidence paints a very different picture. Detainees are held without charge, denied access to lawyers or family visits. They are forced to renounce their religion, pledge allegiance to the Communist Party, and denounce their own culture. These camps are not about education or rehabilitation. They are instruments of control, designed to break the spirit of the Uyghur people. The international community cannot remain silent in the face of such egregious human rights abuses. The United Nations, human rights organizations, and governments around the world must demand accountability from the Chinese government. Sanctions should be imposed on those responsible for these atrocities, and pressure must be applied for the closure of the re-education camps. The case of Ilham Tohti, a Uyghur scholar sentenced to life in prison for peacefully advocating for the rights of his people, exemplifies the Chinese government's brutal crackdown on dissent. His continued detention is a travesty of justice and a stark reminder of the urgent need for international action. The world must not stand idly by while an entire people is systematically persecuted. We must raise our voices in unison, demanding justice for the Uyghurs and an end to the oppression in Xinjiang.